Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the second episode of Cast Iron, a podcast about metal. I am Lewis Clark from UK Scum Scene, and I'm joined once again by my cohort, Alan Williamson from 5 out of 10. Hello, Alan.
Good evening.
How are you doing, sir?
I am very good, thanks. I have taken up swimming.
Oh, right. Okay. Interesting.
So yeah, there's your fun Alan fact. No, yeah, I've just that's the main thing on my mind. I've taken up swimming. Apart from the album we're about to discuss, obviously that's on my mind.
What have you been listening to in your spare time?
I've been listening to this SikTh album over and over, trying to drill it into my head and working through their back catalogue. I've also been listening to In Mourning. I was listening to some of them.
Okay.
I've been listening to the new Enslaved album called In Times. Cool. And I've also been listening to a bit of Duran Grey because we're going to see them in a couple of weeks.
We are indeed. I've been listening to Silosis almost religiously at the moment because.
Oh, is this Dormant Heart?
I've had that for a little while, but I realised I was missing Monolith, which I recently got in Glasgow because I was up for the weekend to see friends, and I really like that album quite a lot. It's taken me a little while to sort of click with Silosis because I absolutely adore their first album because it's really quick and punchy and doesn't muck around. But ever since they lost their original vocalist in favour of just their guitarist now does the vocals as well, it feels like things are drawn out a little bit more, and they spend a lot more time just sort of trying to get to the point. So sort of trying to teach myself how to like longer Silosis songs, basically. So yeah,
I think it was you recommended Dormant Heart to me, actually.
Yeah, it's more of a return to sort of the quicker, sort of punchier songs of their earlier stuff. So yeah,
it's good though. But speaking of what's in our hearts, so in the first episode we introduced ourselves and we talked a bit about how the podcast got formed. But one thing that we talked about after the show, which was that we didn't really explain the philosophy behind it and why we're doing this and what we hope to get out of it. So Cast Iron is a discussion about music from two people who care a lot. It is not objective. This isn't a marks out of 10 thing. And while our taste in music is inarguably impeccable, we are not here to tell you what to like. We're just here to share it with you, things that we like, and we hope that you really like that too. So that was just to make sure you understood that this isn't us bringing down the rock tablets from Mount Sinai. And it is very much a bringing you into our world, hopefully sharing a bit of our knowledge of, even ourselves and our experiences. But yeah, just helping you navigate through metal rather than giving you the map and telling you to follow the trail. No,
of course. I'm glad we established that as well because in certain metal communities, there's a certain level of elitism with how people listen to the music, and I really don't want to spread that sort of vibe. I really want people to just enjoy or dislike whatever the hell they want, because opinions are completely open. You can be as unique as you want. If you like something, then that's great. If you don't like something, then that's great as well.
And I think if you didn't get that from the overall tone of the podcast, the fact that Lewis totally crapped on one of my favourite bands was a good indication. So speaking of people crapping on us, we've got a bit of feedback from the first episode in a section I like to call the ironing board.
Cool.
So, first one was smart comments, good jokes, and Alan doing a scary movie announcer voice at one point. That's from our friend Will. He's at Dark Wedge on Twitter. I'm not sure what the scary movie announcer voice is, but
I think it was when we were talking about Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So yeah.
Okay.
Which would make sense, I suppose.
I need to watch my ridiculous voices, apart from the accent I'm currently using, which is unfortunately my real voice. Another comment, which was Brave New World was a better album than Power Slave, and we should have picked that. That was from absolutely everyone on the internet. I got a text message that said, Lewis's opinions about Steve Harris were boiling my piss at the start. That was from my brother, Paul.
Sorry, Paul.
And then here's another one. It made me listen to Maiden all day. I would agree with Paul about the Steve Harris comments. That's one of the reasons Maiden are great. That's from my other brother, Daniel Williamson, in the same comment thread. So thanks to my brothers who are also massive Iron Maiden fans. But we're here to boil your piss. At least if your piss is boiling or even mildly bubbling, that does mean that you care about what we have to say, and that's what matters to us. And we have one question as well. So we asked on.
Oh, okay.
We asked on Twitter for two things. We asked what are some of your favorite albums. It was really good because there's a wide mix in there, but they also picked some of the albums that we would love to cover in future episodes.
Oh, very much so.
So that is very nice indeed. So we also asked for your questions. We got one question, and the question was, why is Alan such a cutie? It was from our friend Verinder in Toronto.
That's a secret. You can't know that.
Well, I would say jeans, exercise, and vegetables. But back to the swimming. Basically,
No, that's a very fair point, and it's the reason why I'm not the cutie. So there you go.
Oh no! We have a very special relationship
over the internet.
I guess we need to move on to the main event, which is your album of choice for this week. So it was Lewis's choice, and you chose...
I chose SikTh's debut album, The Trees Are Dead and Dried Out, Wait for Something Wild. Now, before we kick off with actually discussing the tracks, I suppose we'll have a bit of history as to what was going on with the band at this sort of time. The Trees Are Dead and Dried Out was released in 2003, and if you want to think about sort of the context of when this was released, this is the same year that Linkin Park released Meteora. So we're pretty much in the thick of nu metal era at the moment.
We're ankle deep.
Yeah, pretty much.
No, that's not deep at all. We're up there waist in it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Ankle deep. God, sorry.
It's all good. Don't worry about it. But yeah, so that gives you a sort of the idea of what's the sort of era that this was being released in. So you can imagine 6 guys from Watford playing absolutely bonkers tech metal would have sounded a bit out of place. So I was familiar with SikTh prior to the release of their debut album. I got into them sort of early 2002. I saw them live first, and Visible Noise are you may or be aware of the label. They've released things by Bullet for My Valentine and Bring Me the Horizon, sort of broke them into the mainstream. And they used to do a club night in London called Subverse, and it was sort of a matinee all-ages show. Really diverse lineups. You get like punk and ska next to nu metal and rock bands and things, and it was always really good fun. And it was like £3 to get in, and it's like I say, all ages. Really good way to be introduced.
Those were the days.
Yeah, no, fantastic. But like, it was an absolutely brilliant way to be introduced to just lots of heavy music, and really sort of formative for me. And yeah, SikTh played one of them, and I always remember it quite vividly because it still remains the only show I've ever crowd surfed at.
So, is this back when they were called Fifth? Sorry, I had to get that joke in there. I thought of it during the intro and couldn't help myself. So you actually crowd surfed? What happened? Did you get to the front and then one of the guards whisked you away? Or?
No. Well, I because the way the stage worked, there was no barrier sort of thing. So you just sort of like climbed up onto what was essentially just a small platform. It wasn't really a stage as such, and then leaped into the crowd. But depending on how lucky you were, they'd either put you back on the stage or off the back of the stage. I was lucky; they put me back on the stage, and I just sort of wandered off. But as you can imagine, it looks a bit awkward. Just some kid just being chucked back on the stage.
I remember the first time I saw somebody crowd surfing. We were at a Metallica gig. It must have been 2002.
Okay,
they were touring Saint Anger.
Yep.
That's another story for another day. And this guy was in front of us, and he was like, lift me up. So we lifted this guy up, and he started to crowd surf, and he vanished. He just vanished into this massive stadium crowd.
Well,
it was the
that's
first
what
time I'd
happens,
seen
isn't
it happen. I just thought, he's not coming back. He's dead. He's gone to Asgard or something. I didn't know. First metal gig I'd been to, I didn't know what happened. I thought he just crowd surfed forever into a massive grinder at the back or something.
Well, that's how it'd go down at sort of like a Metalocalypse show, I suppose.
So did you get into SikTh?
So yeah, it
should have been. They were promoting this album, or
no? So it would have
been me some of the EPs prior to that as well.
So 2002, they released 2 EPs throughout the year. The first one being "Let the Transmitting Begin," which includes "Such the Fool," "If You Weren't So Perfect," and "Hold My Finger," which all appear on the debut album in different forms. The second EP, released later on in the year, was "How May I Help You," which again is on the album, but it also includes a song which is completely exclusive to it called "Suffice," and it's quite important because it's the first SikTh song ever written, and they sort of re-recorded it and put it on the EP. And the last song on that EP is the cover of Tupelo, which also appears on the album, which I'm looking forward to talking about actually because it's quite an intriguing little thing. But yeah, so those 2 EPs, like I say, came out in 2002, and I was basically following the band through the cycle of, the touring cycle for both of those. And then in 2003, they dropped the album. So yes, the album, The Trees Are Dead and Dried Out, Wait for Something Wild, starts with Scent of the Obscene. I've got the album here because there's lots of liner notes and things that talk about the songs, and this is apparently one of the last songs released, sort of written for the album actually. So yeah, conceived mid 2002. So during the cycles for the previous EPs, but not, obviously earlier on when the EPs were written, sort of like mid 2000, 2001, I would have thought.
Well, a lot of these debut albums, they are mashups and reiterations of
how do you feel about that actually? Because like I always have a bit of a it's a bit of a touchy subject for me, because sometimes I really like hearing re-recordings, but sometimes I feel like if you're so familiar with EPs prior, then to hear those songs just churned out again for a debut album kind of feels a bit lazy.
I don't know, because these songs need time to evolve. Like one of those. I like those demo tracks and I like hearing the progression. I'm trying to think. There was stuff like hearing some of the stuff off Red Hot Chili Peppers Stadium Arcadium, when those songs they had worked out the music but not necessarily the lyrics, which is not very surprising because Red Hot Chili Pepper lyrics are gibberish. But the gibberish changes over time. The other one that immediately springs to mind, you'll be really familiar with, is the Him Uneasy Listening album.
Oh, yes.
Have the 616 version of Buried Alive by Love. And I love that version, and that was the one on the Bam Margera skate tapes.
Yeah. It's also that's a running theme actually, because if you have the singles for a lot of stuff, they actually release 616 versions of lots of different songs, and it's basically just the demo version of the song before it was recorded properly for the record. And there's a really good 616 version of And Lod Said No as well. But
I wouldn't call it lazy. I think it depends. On the album, and one of the things, like I did my homework and I listened to the EPs, and it was actually very hard for me to tell the difference between the versions of the tracks. I think that's and I think that's because you've grown up with this album. You've
this is the thing.
And for me, I'm very much a novice. So it's hard to pick out the differences.
Well, for me, this is the thing. This becomes a sticking point actually for me listening to this record, is that I can't tell whether or not I like the EP versions more than the album versions, because I was so familiar with the songs. But regardless, let's kick off things with Scent of the Obscene. So, this is the album opener, and pretty much establishes what you're in for the rest of the record. So, this is technical progressive metal, I suppose, in the gent mold that we currently call now.
It's very genty, and we should explain what gent is. Gent is not a genre, really. It is it's a style of playing, and it's onomatopoeic. So gent is the kind of gent noise that the guitar makes. That's why it's called gent, but it's not necessarily a subgenre. I've got a couple of albums I've picked out as being genty for further listening at the end. So we're not going into too much detail about those, but that's what gent means. It's a specific guitar playing style. I think the chord in particular that it refers to is sort of it comes from Meshuggah. They always talk about that being sort of the origin for that, and it's a palm muted sort of chord, hence the gent, like the instant cut off sort of thing. But this is quite this album's pretty influential to UK tech metal, and it sort of establishes a lot of the tropes. I hate that word, but for want of a better term,
and that come with this. That come with this genre. And one of the things I really like about SikTh, and this album in particular, is established straight away in Scent of the Obscene, is that the songs are not particularly progressive, they're just very technical, because the structure, especially with Scent of the Obscene, is verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, which is very much a pop song structure. And
but one thing that happens is that the style of the song changes, which makes it slightly more proggy. And even though, as you say, it does the usual verse, chorus, verse type thing, the mood of it shifts, and that's what gives it that more proggy feel for me, because you've got that really interesting, technical, genty kind of riff and the slappy bass line at the start, but then as you move to the chorus, you've got a much cleaner kind of, I guess, more standard rock chord progression. In the middle, you've got that nice lighter section that I really like. So for me, first experience of SikTh. I don't know at what point we're going to talk about these vocals, but
yeah. So we should probably actually talk about the lineup, because there are six men in SikTh, and two of them are vocalists. And this is obviously quite a bizarre thing, because an awful lot of the time one vocalist can pretty much carry a band, but SikTh sort of have a good playoff between the two vocalists. So the screamer, I suppose, is Mikey Goodman, and he is bizarre. Let's put it that way. A very peculiar individual.
Plenty of ways I can put it, but we're trying to make this a clean podcast.
So Mikey Goodman is influenced quite heavily by Nick Cave, in that he has this weird sort of cartoony, characteristic voice, that all these weird sort of sounds and guttural noises, and just he sounds absolutely off his head. But considering the music is equally just as mad, he suits the band, I think, perfectly. And then there's also Justin Hill, who I would suppose is the clean vocalist. He does, but both vocalists do sing and scream, but for all intents and purposes, one is more of a screamer than the other, and Justin Hill, I would say, is more of the singer. And he's got.
Does he play any other instruments, or does he?
No, he's literally just another singer. Okay. And I mean, I don't want to undersell the man, because I think he's a fantastic vocalist. But his voice is very sort of sugary, almost like a sort of emo vocal. That I would sort of liken to things like, I don't know, My Chemical Romance, whatever.
Yeah,
sort of,
it reminded me a little bit of something like Bullet or something like that, where you've got that clean singing. It's better than Bullet, because their clean singing's pretty bad, but it's got a slight English accent to it, which is actually, which I really like, actually.
So Justin in particular, he deals pretty much solo with the bridge on this song, where it sort of slows down and takes a gentler moment. And I really like the texture that both vocalists bring, because they use Mikey obviously very heavily for heavier, more intense moments of the songs, and when things lighten up a little bit, Justin comes into play and gives it a nice burst of melody. So I want to know how you feel about the vocalists, because as I wrote my notes as I worked through it from track to track. The first track, I said the screaming vocals are off-putting, but the clean vocals are pretty good. Right. I would now revise that to say the screaming vocals are extremely off-putting, but in this song they're just about okay, and the clean vocals I really quite like. I do like the clean singing, and whenever I heard it for the first time, I thought, oh my God, people are not going to want to listen to this. And I think it really is a Marmite thing. And I think by the time I got to the end of this album, I couldn't stand it anymore. And I've got some good jokes in there that I've made. I can totally see where you're coming from. I think Mikey is definitely, as you say, a very Marmite-y vocalist. I think you either love him or you hate him, and I've got to say I really like him, because I think he's very characteristic, and I like that he brings an element. It's a strange sort of mashup of comedy yet metal vocal, traditional metal screaming and things.
You like silliness to your rock. You like a bit of lightheartedness. I'm not saying I like it po-faced, but you said even in the first show that you like that kind of thing.
But in a weird way as well, SikTh are quite important to me in introducing me to odd, weird stuff, and listening to that first EP. I remember picking up Let the Transmitting Begin and listening to it the first time and just being like, what? I don't understand this music. Am I supposed to like this? Is there supposed to be a chorus? Is there supposed to be something like I can get my head round? I couldn't hear hooks initially. It took a long time for me to sort of meld with that album in a very similar way, actually, to the first time I listened to Korn. Actually, it was so sort of out there and just really bizarre.
There's bands like Korn, and because this is all around the same time, there's bands like Korn, Slipknot, are bands I've never really got into, and I think that this is another album to me that if somebody said, "Oh, I'm new to metal," give me something to break me into it, there is no way I would give them this. And I think it's only because I have been listening to this album in detail over and over a few times to try and fully appreciate it that I can even begin to get a grasp on it.
But yes, Scent of the Obscene. So there you go.
Interesting choice for a second episode. This'll separate the rockers from the wannabes.
Well, also there's a good connection here actually to the previous episode. So Scent of the Obscene was chosen as the lead single for the album, and the single has a B-side which is
Wrathchild.
Yeah, a re-recording of Wrathchild by Iron Maiden. Have you listened to that cover?
Yeah, I did. It was a good cover. I really liked it actually.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty punchy actually.
And it made me think, why can't they do all the vocals like that? but Scent of the Obscene I really liked. I liked the variation in it. I liked the technicality. It filled me with hope for the full album. And to be honest, I wish it was all like this. But it is very different.
So yeah, okay, no worries. For me personally, I'm not going to continue. I'm not going to say I love this track, I love this track, I love this track, because this album's been with me for a very long time, and I absolutely adore it. So Scent of the Obscene, I mean, this was a new song for me when I got the album, so it was something new to learn. I mean, there's quite a lot of stuff off the previous EPs that get re-recorded, but yeah, this was fun because new song, something different, and I think it really kicks off the album with a nice. A nice example of what the band can do.
That's good. It's a good track. I like it. It's one of my favourite ones in the album.
So yes, right. Moving on then. The next song is Pussyfoot. Which appears. Well, actually, it never did get re-released. It never got re-recorded on an EP, but there is a demo that features Pussyfoot and Suffice, which are the band's first two songs. So this is a very, very old one. It actually says on the album lineup it's conceived mid-1999. So this wouldn't see actual release until this album, so 4 years later. So yeah, Pussyfoot is pretty much a barrage.
Pussyfoot, or as Mikey Goodman calls it, Pussyfoot.
yeah.
Whenever he announces it. Okay, so I want to run this by you because as I was listening to this song, this hypothetical scenario went into my head. Okay.
Yep.
So we go to a restaurant. You and I we're celebrating a couple of successful episodes of the podcast.
Okay.
And we sit down, and we have a look at the menus and things, and I'm just talking normally to you, and then the waiter comes over and says, "So, have you've had a look at the menu?" And I say, "I don't know, I need a little more time." Woo! And the waiter goes, "Okay," and they kind of back off a bit, and then I go back and start talking normally to you, and you go, "What was that? What was that about?" And I said, I don't know. I just sometimes that's just how I talk." And then the waiter comes over again, slightly more apprehensively this time, and says, "Would you like to order?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I'll get the burger and fries." And he goes, "Oh great." And I go, "Thank you very much." And at that point, we get ejected from the restaurant. So I think this is me trying to explain what this is like for me to listen to. I find the vocals become more annoying as you go through the album, and they become harder to ignore. And I have a very mixed relationship with screaming at the best of times.
Right.
I think some bands do it very well and some don't. I'm not a fan of that kind of black metal, really high pitched screaming.
Okay, see, I really favour that.
I think it's okay. Oh gosh. But what I don't like about it is that I find the lyrics somewhat incomprehensible, and there's one part where it alternates between both of your ears, so it pans between the different stereo tracks, and that was like an act of torture. And what's really annoying is that it kind of ruins the whole song for me, because I thought the drums in particular were incredible. I'm a real sucker for really great driving bass drums and cheeky little snare fills.
Yeah.
This track for me is worth it for the drums alone. I was listening to a couple of drum covers last night to try and break down the album a little bit more. And the drums in Pussyfoot are really hard hitting. And it's got a lot of drive to it.
Yeah. Well, I've got to say, I'm a little bit upset that you're not into the vocals, but it's understandable. I can completely see where you're coming from.
I really tried. I really tried. And to be honest, the more I listened, the less bad it got.
But yeah, if you're not into screaming, then something this intense is definitely gonna be a testing experience, I think. So yeah. But yeah, Pussyfoot for me, I absolutely adore this song. I've known it and listened to it for God knows how long. It's one of the most intense songs on the album. It doesn't have any point where it lets up. It's really, really fast. Just really creative. I think some of my favourite riffs on the album are in this song in particular. The one nearer the end, the sort of
Yeah,
just so
it does
bonkers.
a little loopy bits.
Yeah.
where they
It's
fit
just
in so many bends and niggles, and there's
I think
one thing throughout the album. There's lots of different little inflections and tiny little flicks of
definitely.
musical color to it. That's really really fun to listen to.
I think that's one of the reasons why I really like this song in particular. It just feels like the guitar work in particular is really creative, really just off the wall and bonkers. And yeah, the vocals match it just as well. I think we should probably talk about the concept of the song, because as you were saying, like you can't really the lyrics are pretty incomprehensible, but the Pussyfoot is actually a song about it's the sort of, I suppose it's Mikey's disdain for people that just sort of follow suit, sit in, you know, our sheep follow trends and just don't really do anything for themselves. So there's actually the sheep element, in fact, becomes quite prevalent at the end of the song, where there's a load of bleating.
Yeah, it was subtle.
So yes, he's definitely not a subtle lyricist, it's got to be said, and we'll talk about that later on, because we've got such the fool to talk about. But
I've got the lyrics up in front of me. They're quite interesting. Now you spit back in the face of things that control and dissolve your mind. Why can't you shout out? Why can't you be yourself? Forget what others think. To be proud, to be you, must be you. You don't need to follow. Why not let your mind grow? Why exclude the unknown? Maybe you could also be... And then it fades out to the bleating of sheep.
So yeah, there you go. Nice and deep, but incredibly obvious.
Yeah. But it's hard. Like, a lot of these songs, if anybody is listening to this kind of music for the first time, don't be surprised that you need to look up the lyrics online, because it's not easy to discern for anybody.
No,
I've been listening to it for a very long time.
Well, I mean, I only know the lyrics because I've sat there listening to the album with the lyric sheet open and, you know, just reading through the book, and because I've got to say, part of my enjoyment of listening to music is the physicality of CDs and album liner notes and things like that, and I do read along to lyrics and things like that, and I've SikTh. I think it's almost it's incredibly important to the SikTh experience, actually, because so much of it is so intense and difficult to understand that it's nice to have a point of reference. So yeah, but yes, I'd say Pussyfoot is one of my favourite songs on the album.
Is it? Oh, I forgot to ask. Is this your favourite song on the album?
I'm going to say that it is, actually. Yeah.
I was going to say that's not me cheating, I swear.
No, I had a lot. Basically, the older tracks or the more intense stuff was always going to be my choice. And as much as I love Such the Fool, Hold My Finger, How May I Help You, I think the album versions in particular, I'm not as keen on. I don't think they're as intense. So yeah, this version of Pussyfoot, obviously being exclusive to this record, doesn't have that problem. So yeah, Pussyfoot kind of wins out for me. So there you go. Right, let's continue. We're now on to Hold My Finger.
I do what I like with you. Just understand this not right now. Don't wanna talk right now. I'm trying to talk, but when I die, you remain lost spiritually. I'm alone with you. You must look it through when I wake up on my top. Where do you go?
Which again comes off the first EP.
Yeah. Do you want to hear my vocal analogy joke?
Go on then.
My notes say, at this point, I was praying for the screaming guy to go away, but he's back from the outset. It sounds like a rooster being goaded with a flaming torch.
Well, that's a fantastic image. Well, so yes, this is another quick, heavy, fast track, and the concept for this one is, well, I can look at Mikey's notes himself. Written in a comical way about the circles of energy you can create by hugging someone or holding their hand or fingers. Doesn't work for everyone, not for the hearts of stone.
I was going to say the lyrics seem to have other things about erections and things like that.
Sex comes up quite prevalently in Mikey's lyrics, it's got to be said, and at one point almost offensively. But like I say,
I've just started reading the lyrics, and the last two sort of stanzas that I can't read it. I think I'll read part of it, and I'll go put on a Johnny, open the pack, then it's back flopping before me. Mine starts to hurt. you scream and talk to me like I wish you could know exactly what I mean.
Oh God, this is...
I'm so wasted. I'd not last anyway. You'd think I suck and never see me again.
This is really like...
This is existential horror.
This is young men not really understanding relationships, pretty much. So yeah, it is definitely a product of these guys being young and not really understanding the nuance of writing memorable lyrics. But yeah,
but he's blazed. He's absolutely baked. That's why he can't keep it up. He says my stoner loving finger hold. It's all about the naivety of trying to initiate coitus while being stoned out of your gills.
So yeah, maybe his description of the track is covering up an excuse for something a little bit more obvious there. But there you go. This very much follows the same sort of mold as Pussyfoot and a lot of the heavier songs on this. It is pretty much a barrage of absolutely mental riffs, just twisting and turning and going wherever the hell they want, but still at the same time holding up a pretty traditional song structure. There are returning melodies and choruses and verses. It's a very traditional song structure, just the actual elements of the song are pretty mad.
One thing I really love about this song is the bass solo that kicks in.
Oh yes.
So it's and then you've got the before you get the long bendy bass line goes ooh. It sounds like they're revving up a lawnmower before they're going to go right over somebody in it. It's really good, and it just gets the blood racing. It's like Pussyfoot. It's another songs to mosh to.
Yeah.
Songs to mosh to, not necessarily songs to make love to.
Yeah.
But I do think that, again, I don't understand why they have all the crap singing and bizarre rapping when they've got a really quite good clean vocalist. Because as soon as I get into it, I think, I can get into this. I like the singing. Then this rooster comes back again. You've his wings slightly singed, and he's hungry for your blood. And I understand where they're coming from, but I just find it so off-putting.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Again, I completely understand where you're coming from, but I genuinely don't agree.
I don't want to harp on about it for the whole album.
No, of course.
It's a recurring thing,
yep.
So I've kind of written down where it particularly annoyed me.
Yeah. No, that's fair. But yeah, this is another one of my favourite tracks on the album, but again, it's because I'm familiar with it prior, because it was released on an EP. So yes.
Okay.
Cool. Right, now... things change up a little bit with the next track, Skies of Millennium Night. This is one of the sort of later songs written for the album in particular. And I'd say this marks a point where things begin to sort of become a little bit more contemplative.
It gets a bit proggy.
Yeah. So I think the thing I remember about this song the most is actually just that intro riff.
Yeah. No, I've written great opening riffs, and I really like that chord progression again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's good. It's got a really nice build up to it.
And I think vocally as well, I think you probably enjoyed this one a little bit more because it's a little bit more traditional in its sense that it doesn't have this mad cartoony voices going on all the time. And
it's got the genty middle section where he's shouting "Look at the sky" a lot. Yep. It is a really good track. Whenever I listened to the album the whole way through, the first time, this was my favourite one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not right now, so that's not cheating. You can't say it's your favourite track because you'd be wrong. I've laid a trap for you.
But yes, I've got a pretty good idea what your favourite track is, but we'll get to it.
All right. We'll see about that.
But yeah, Skies of Millennium Night. I like this song. Don't get me wrong. And coming back to the album, I definitely found a bit of a new appreciation for it because I was listening to it more as an adult than I was as a child because I would have been about 15, 16 when I first heard this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I haven't come back to the album for quite a while, so it was fun listening to a lot of these songs because they're not the ones I instantly go to, and I'd say this was probably one I'd skip in the long run. But it's not that it's a bad song. It's just that I prefer others, sort of thing. So
we can never go for a car trip with this album on because you'll want to skip the ones that I want to listen to, and vice versa. I really love the ending of this song. I love that bit whenever I think I was out in the back garden, like hanging up some washing, listening to it, and I could feel the synth swirling around inside my head while the guitar started to take over and take me away, and it fits the name well.
Yeah,
it's got that otherworldly feel of, that's what the skies of Millennium Night thing reminds me. They're looking up into space and contemplating upon the infinite. It's a really nice way to end that track.
No, totally. And I'm glad you picked up on that, because the atmospherics are something I really enjoy about this record. There's lots of songs that come later where they add sort of effects and wind howling and things like that, and rain and stuff, and it really builds this lovely, just fulsome sort of environment, and the songs flourish a lot more. And this would be one of the first songs on the record, I suppose, that does it. Well, if you can ignore the sheep, I suppose, on Pussyfoot. But yeah, yes, I like this song quite a lot more progressive than the songs that have just come prior to it. But at the same time, I think because the thing sort of slows down and the pace, the middle of this album definitely sort of plateaus, and this is sort of the early signs of this. So yeah, I suppose it would be more of a track to skip for me. So, but yeah, there we go. Those are my thoughts. Cool. Right. Now we are moving on to Emerson Part 1. Now
it's nice wee filler.
Well, you say filler, but when you, I think understanding the context of the song helps it a little bit more. So the liner notes from Dan Weller read: "My dear friend Phil Emerson died on October 5th, 2000. Growing up, we had dreamt of making music together. It makes me very sad that he couldn't be here with us today to share my achievements. Without Phil's influence, I wouldn't be doing this now. This is my thank you to him." So this is a really touching little couple of this comes in two parts.
Oh,
it's a completely piano-led track. There are no vocals. It's just the piano on its own, really. There are a touch of atmospherics. They add some sort of, you can hear children playing in a playground in one of the passages. But the song was actually written as one massive phrase on its own. But on the album, it's split into two parts, and this is the first. And I like the way they've done this, actually, because the first part actually feels very somber. The atmosphere is definitely sort of a darker tone, and it definitely matches the theme of a friend passing and things. So I think context really sort of helps this song a little bit more. You
probably should have told me that before I barged in. That's totally my own fault.
But yeah, no worries at all. I mean, like, you didn't have a physical copy to hand, so it's completely understandable. But yes, I do really like the way Skies leads into this, because again, like I say, this marks a point where the album's sort of beginning to slow its pace a little bit and become a little bit more thoughtful.
Yeah, it's a good seg. It's a good kind of bridge between Skies of Millennium Night and Peep Show that comes afterwards, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And there's not really much more we can say about it, to be honest with you, because it very much stands on its own.
Breather.
So, yeah.
That's right. It's a nice breather after the first few songs.
So yes, and like you said, it does lead into Peep Show, which I'm going to guess is your favourite song on the album.
Yes.
Yeah.
It totally is. Good
stuff.
If only I wasn't so opaque.
It's also one of my favourites, actually, and listening to it again recently, I totally forgot how excellent Justin's vocals are. The range on this song is fantastic. He really just, it's a lovely sweeping melody, a lot of texture to it. It's really beautiful to listen to, and he does drop from quite a low register to really high soaring vocal.
Yeah, no, the whole thing is really good, really dynamic. What did I like about it? Pretty much everything. I thought the screaming was a lot better than earlier tracks, and it blended very well into the vocals.
Well, Mikey doesn't appear on this song at all. It's completely okay. Justin. So yeah.
Just as well I'm not their band manager.
But yeah, no, a really beautiful song, actually. I'll have a look and see the line notes. Basically, very short little thing from Justin. Some people try too hard to involve themselves in the lives of others. This song is about them. So yeah, it's obviously just a comment on
But
people he doesn't like, I suppose.
It's very good, and again, there's another killer drum track. And
very much so.
I was thinking about it last night. I was I was watching somebody cover the drums from Meshuggah's Bleed.
Oh, okay.
And I started watching all these drum covers of SikTh, and I was like, wow, it's like drums are really the best bit for me about a lot of prog and tech metal. I love the intricacy of it, especially whenever it either complements or even matches the guitar melodies. And I wish the whole album was like this, to be honest. If we did 12 tracks of that, I would have been having a lovely time, as opposed to a merely pretty good time.
But this is one of the things I really like about the album as a whole, actually, is that this is really diverse. Like, if you compare it to everything else on the record, it proper stands out. And I do like the fact that this album doesn't really have a particular sound that continues throughout the entire record. I think they're very creative with what they do, and I love that. In a weird way, I really like that this stands alone, to be honest with you, because it's such a. It's really. So it has an identity of its own, basically. So
I was chatting to my brother about this last night, because he obviously listens to the show. He was the one who's pishy boiled, and he was saying he listened to some of the song previews on iTunes, and he thought, oh, the screaming in this is absolutely terrible. And that is a guy that likes black metal. But I said no. I sent him a link to Peep Show, and the other one, which I think is perhaps my favourite song out of all of the SikTh stuff I've listened to, which is Where Do We Fall?
Okay.
From Death of a Dead Day.
Yep.
Which is another similar kind of structure. Again, really nice singing, just a more mellow, but yet no less intricate and proggy song. Mm-hmm. So they definitely have their moments. And okay, even if I really can't stand some of the songs in this, will likely never listen to them again. I think there's something for everyone in here.
Yeah.
I genuinely think there's going to be songs there's going to be at least one song in this that people will like, and this is probably one of the songs that if you were rubbed up the wrong way by some of the earlier music, this was a really pleasant surprise.
No, completely. And you'll be pleased to know as well that this was chosen as the other single off the album. So there's a music video for this as well, if you want to go and check that out at some point. But yeah, Peep Show, definitely an album highlight for me as well. I really like this song quite a lot, and coming back to it now as well, I definitely felt more of a stronger attachment to it than I did previously, because again, when you're growing up with metal and things, you just want things to be heavy and loud, and I think probably as a kid I probably ignored this a little bit more than I probably should have, because coming back to it now was like, this is a really impressive song. Like, everybody,
do you think it was a bit too emo?
I think probably as a kid, I was probably ignoring it for that very reason, but yeah, I think nowadays I put those things aside now, and don't worry about pigeonholing things in genres and stuff, because it's you're just gonna miss good opportunities like this. I think it's a shame that I wrote it off previously. So
everybody makes mistakes.
Well, there you go.
So
but
next track is Wait for Something Wild, and this track really is wild. It explodes out of the back of Peep Show, and it's full of energy and aggression in the drums and the guitars, and a massive fat riff always wins me over in spite of the screaming.
Why don't you come back with me tonight? I can't like you. Why don't you come back with me tonight? Is this
But and the show notes that I've written here say, Jesus Christ, the screaming is so annoying. It's a bit disappointing. The strangled chicken vocals are killing me. I've written. It's like an obituary. If somebody found me in this Evernote file, they could find out what led to my demise. But it's got a lot of punch to it.
Oh, definitely. And I think it's one of the songs that the band's really quite proud of, actually. I think they talk specifically somewhere in these liner notes about performing it on. They got invited into a radio live session and did it, and the sort of feedback they were getting on it at the time was like really positive. So they were quite happy to sort of go with it as it. In a weird way, it's almost the title track, because Wait for Something Wild is the second part of the phrase used for the title of the album. But again, this, in a similar way to Scars of Millennium Night, I like the song, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever, but at the same time, its pace is a lot sort of more careful. They're definitely more thoughtful about the speed of it. It's not as aggressive and intense as some of their previous songs. But it does have some great phrases. I really like the spin, swim, scream, like repetition that happens near the end, and it just gives it all this mad, wild. It actually ends on its own, doesn't it? Like just the two of the vocalists just repeating it over and over again, and just bonkers.
Yeah, over and over again,
turmoil,
over and over and over again. There is one bit that I really liked in this song, which is the middle section with the long drum roll and the bass groove. It was good.
Oh yes, I know what you're on about. Yeah. But again, as much as I like the song, it's probably not one I would pick out to. If I was putting on a good example of this record, I probably wouldn't pick this one out, sort of thing. So it would more than likely become a skipper. But yeah, cool. I think it's time to move on to Tupelo, which I've
Tupelo.
Yep. I love this cover. Now, I hadn't actually checked out the original version until you were speaking about...
Until I said I'd been listening to it.
So I did that, and I was really surprised at how close this is to the original
So was
version.
So was I, because I thought, these guys are mad bastards.
Yeah.
I wonder what the original is going to be like, and that was what piqued my curiosity. But it's actually very close to the original.
Yeah. And it's actually quite interesting because Mikey's obviously very heavily influenced by Nick Cave because he's got a very similar sort of cartoony characterful voice, and he gets to really sort of flex that on this. He basically is just paying homage to one of his heroes. And interestingly, after SikTh, Mikey formed a band called Sad Season, which didn't really get around to recording anything, but they featured members from Million Dead, Frank Turner's hardcore band, and also members of Bat for Lashes, of all people.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Their style was very much Nick Cave. That was their biggest influence. A lot of the articles about their gigs and stuff was always that they were sort of a slower, moodier band in the style of Nick Cave. And I love that they cover this because it puts that influence right at the forefront. You can tell like this is one of Mikey's heroes essentially, and he's paying homage to him on this cover pretty much. But yeah, and
I think. Oh, well, it's interesting because I'm looking at the lyrics now, and what was the one I picked up? Yeah, why the hen won't lay no egg, can't get that cock to crow. But in my notes, I've written that it's Jim Morrison back from the grave, possessed by the rooster from the earlier tracks. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of Nick Cave, and I think this really causes the album to sag. It is so long, and it is really quite repetitive. And I was just, I didn't think I was going to make it.
Well, the thing is as well, it unfortunately doesn't really stand alone in that the song that follows it, Can't We All Dream, is basically SikTh's interpretation or their own kind of spin on a very similar style of song. And in a weird way, I kind of like that actually, because they establish outright, look, this is an artist that we enjoy and is influential to us, and then the song that follows it is basically SikTh's take on Nick Cave. So yeah, it does feel like the two songs are almost interpolated. This is a long old passage of record for you to be completely bored by. I've got to be said.
I mean, Can't We All Dream?
I mean, I'm not a big fan of Can't We All Dream.
No, I thought it was absolute dross. Are you a big fan of The Doors?
I've never really sort of bothered to check them out, to be honest with you.
Whenever I was a long-haired hippie in sixth form and early university, I worked my way through The Doors' back catalogue, and I do like their stuff. I really like their later albums. They're very bluesy. But what happened after Jim Morrison left The Doors, before he died, he did this thing called An American Dream, where it was a recorded spoken word poetry compilation. Right. And this does not sound that dissimilar from it.
Oh, okay.
But it reminds me of The Doors at their most pretentious.
Yeah.
With Jim Morrison-esque howling into the abyss. Especially at the end, it is a full 2 minutes of him saying, "Can't we all dream?" with no backing. And I was dreaming of the next track. I thought it was never going to end. And Yeah,
that outro in particular as well really annoys me because he's not in tune at all.
And we all dream.
Yeah.
And it just gets so
That's
dragged out.
Dead on.
Oh,
like
man,
if you want to save yourself the hassle of listening to this song, Alan just did it for you.
Can't we all dream? Just over and over for 2 minutes. Yeah.
Can't we all dream? Can't we all dream? Can't we all dream?
So yes, that's definitely the weakest point of the album for me. It's something I'd never bother really listening to ever
Absolute
again.
clanger. Clanger.
But I've got to say, I do really like the Tupelo cover, just because, again, I like that it gives Can't We All Dream some context, but I also like the fact that it's so. Again, it's similar reasons why I like Peep Show. It's so different. It shows another side of the band.
I think the first time I heard Tupelo, I was not into it, and then by my third or fourth, I was like, have your fun. I don't mind as long as you're enjoying yourself, and they're clearly enjoying themselves. And,
completely.
And can't we all dream of doing a cover of our favorite artist? Let them have their fun.
Definitely. Cool. Right, now we move on to How May I Help You, which is probably the proggiest track on the record. So there are
we've got Emerson Part 2. There's an Emerson
Part 2.
Sorry.
Yep.
And it's nice again. Nice bit of piano.
Yep. We should mention actually because the second part of Emerson definitely feels more uplifting. Actually, it feels like there's a little bit more sort of hope to this part, and and again, it's very good thematically. It ties in with the whole purpose of the song, with a friend passing and stuff.
I really like the ancient ringtone at the end. That took me back to the early 2000s.
Well, this is quite interesting because the original intro to How May I Help You has this sort of wind howling, and then there's like a buzzard squawking in the distance and stuff, and it gives it a little bit of atmosphere as it starts. And that's one of the things I didn't particularly like about this version, is that it lacks it, and instead has this weird sort of it's basically the riff from the start of How May I Help You, but as like a Nokia 3310 ringtone.
Yeah.
It's really strange. But yeah, it doesn't have that. It doesn't kick off with the same sort of atmosphere that the original version has. But I've got to say, How May I Help You is easily one of my favourite SikTh songs. There's this thing with this song that's a little bit more different in comparison to the other heavier songs, is that it's very progressive. There are no returning melodies. Once a riff is past its course, it never comes back, sort of thing. And there's a running story throughout this, and it's basically just a case of a character called Rodney who is alone and doesn't know what to do with his life, and just wants a partner and things, and he gets a job working as a cabin boy on a ship.
As you do.
Meets a woman who he falls in love with, finds out that the woman has been sleeping around with everybody in the local bar, and then decides to put laxatives into the tea of everybody in the bar as revenge. And that's the end of the song. It's I like this a lot, this sort of story element to it, because it basically allows Mikey to go absolutely mental with his character. He basically voices a series of characters throughout the entire song.
This is one of the songs where I thought that the screaming was in some way justified, because it becomes increasingly unhinged as the song goes on, and I really like that. And I like that intricacy to it. Again, it's really melodically interesting.
And I would have said, if I hadn't picked Pussyfoot as my favourite, this would probably come close second, because it's one of my favourite songs by the band. But I'm just not as keen on this version as I am the one that appears on the How May I Help You EP, which definitely feels just a little bit more in your face. I find that a lot with the original versions. They seem like they're performed with a lot more energy, a little bit more passion to them, and these ones definitely feel like they're tried and tested by this point. The band have set into their groove, and they're playing them with a little bit more thought, I suppose, or just carefulness. no offense to the song, I love it, but the album version, I'm not so keen on. But yeah, if you go and check out the music video, How I'll Help You, that uses the EP version, and that's quite widely available on YouTube if you want to go and watch it.
Excellent. Hooray for YouTube.
Well, there you go. If I remember correctly as well, like the only version that seems to be kicking around is one just recorded off MTV2. So it has like the banner at the bottom and stuff. But yes. All right, we're getting on to sort of the last sort of few songs now, I think.
Yeah.
So we're on to If You Weren't So Perfect, which again appears off the first EP. I like this song, but I like it too. I feel this version's a little bit lazy. It doesn't feel nearly as punchy as the original version, especially Justin's sort of "fell in love" vocal. It's a bit like.
I quite like the haunting sort of opening to it, an interesting minor progression that's working its way through the whole song, and I kind of like the ghostly singing. I do think that I can get into SikTh much better whenever they've got, well, I would call it real singing.
Okay, yeah.
And this song epitomizes everything I really like about the band and everything I can't stand in one song.
Well, this is the thing, and it's probably one of the reasons why I like it, actually, is when it stops and changes and goes really heavy. I can't. I really like the stop-start nature of it.
But I of course, written clearly, they're not so perfect.
Well, there you go.
What was it? I think it was Eurogamer's review of Portal 2, where they said it wasn't perfect. It was so much more interesting than that. And that's true about this.
But yeah, no, it's a very weird song. I suppose it's quite progressive as well, but actually, some of the melodies do return throughout the song, especially the way it sort of leads off the gentler, like Justin melody into that really sort of aggressive stop-start Mikey screaming section. But yeah, again, I was overly familiar with the song, which is probably why the album version doesn't really do as much for me, because it feels slower, actually. Like the tempo of the original is just a little bit quicker, and it gives it some real oomph. And yeah, I think this version kind of lacks that a little bit. But no offense to the song, it's still one of my favourites by the band. I just don't think that this version is nearly as good as what had come previously. Right, now, this is quite an interesting one. And I hadn't realised this until now, actually. But yeah, Such the Fool is the name of the song. It's the lead song of their first EP, and it comes re-recorded here. This is quite a peculiar one in that the lyrics for this song are completely omitted from the album booklet, and it's the only one.
I know why. Looking at them right now,
yeah, they're incredibly misogynistic.
Yeah, it's really quite disgusting.
And it's a shame, because I really love the song, but I can't agree with the fact that the lyrics are just so horrible. And the band, in a weird way, they sort of make an excuse. So let me find the liner notes, actually, if they're talking about Such a Fool, because... Yeah, here we go. So, Mikey, a song written long, long ago in a darkly humorous manner. Such a Fool is brutal in terms of subject matter, inspired by men and women in modern-day society. Such a Fool is an extreme fictional character who is both male and female. Take the lyrical content here with a large pinch of salt. Now, that sounds to me like he's making an excuse for being misogynistic. But if that is generally the case, then all right, I'll give him benefit of the doubt that he's created this weird character where he's living sort of a horrible misogynistic fantasy through. But yeah,
I don't see any reason to believe here that based on the lyrics that this is anything to do with what could be a man or a woman.
Yeah,
pretty much every slur is directed at women.
Well, yeah, definitely. I think bitch features quite heavily in this. So lyrically,
you're on a carousel with no horses. You just slide up and down on the poles.
oh, it's so bad. Oh,
And that's the only thing I'm going to read out here, because as I say,
this is
I wanted
pretty
to try
intense.
and make it clean. Obviously, the albums we're going to cover are not going to necessarily be clean.
Yeah.
But I thought that people should be able to listen to the podcast without, I want everybody to be able to listen to.
Of course. And again, I saw SikTh at an all ages show, and they were just as foul mouthed. I don't want to say that it's okay for minors to be able to listen to this sort of thing. It's completely up to. That's why we have parental guidance stickers.
Yeah.
And I would hope that people will listen to the show in a very sort of similar sense. If you are happy to expose minors to this sort of content, then fine. But at the same time,
just tell them it's a bit of fictional character and take the lyrics with a massive pinch of salt.
That's the thing. But yeah, it's a shame because, like I say, I really like the song. It's one of the most intense SikTh songs. There is some absolutely mental riffing going on here. Drumming is absolutely fantastic, really intense, really good stuff.
The rhythms actually remind me a little of System of a Down.
Yeah,
right,
definitely,
down to that
definitely.
singing,
I can
screaming
see that.
dichotomy and the way it all mashes together. That's what it most reminded me of. It's got more of a, I don't know what you'd say, more of a hardcore feel.
Definitely, there is a sort of a punk vibe to this.
Compared to the songs are a lot more prog rocky, or not prog metally, I guess technically.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting song. I don't know if you'd agree with this, probably not, but I feel like by this point the album has gone on for quite a long time. We're nearly at an hour long, especially off the back of Tupelo, Can't We All Dream. I needed to recover a little from that, and I think that's why I didn't give this song as much attention as I probably should have. But it is quite a long one.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if this song isn't particularly long itself, but
but the album itself.
The running time definitely, and I can see like this with the sag in the middle. I think you could easily lose your interest in the last sort of.
Which is a shame. Which is a real shame. But it's good. It's a good track. It's really quite unfortunate lyrics. I don't feel like I can
That's
stress
the thing,
that enough.
yeah.
Every time I look across on my computer screen, I'm horrified by something else.
Yeah. It's a real shame because. Like I say, I hold this band in such high regard, and knowing that song exists is really sort of. I have to sort of separate the art from the artist a little bit because I'm a little bit worried that Mikey actually believes those things. So right. This is the final track of the album, and this establishes a returning Mikey Goodman sort of cliche, in that he's a poet, I suppose, and this is basically a poem that he's written and recorded as, again, sort of several characters with this weird sort of overlaying vocal effect. There is no instrumentation here whatsoever, but it's a strange thing as well, because we were talking about the lyrics and how juvenile and sometimes they can be quite offensive. This feels like there's some real thought in this. It creates some amazing imagery and things. And I really like the wild bones. I love all that sort of thing. And it really plays to his strengths, because he loves all this sort of characterization and creating weird voices and going a bit mad. And it just definitely it's a real sort of like, here's the inner workings of my brains as a song sort of thing. Well, not even a song, as just a...
Yeah, I don't know. My notes are just, what a load of bollocks. Those are all my notes. I don't know. I thought it was just some throwaway doggerel verse at the end. Really pretentious.
Yeah.
And just, I did listen to the whole thing twice, at least. But I did think, okay, guys, come on, let's wrap this up. People turning the lights on and shouting last orders. It's kind of like I mentioned in the first episode. I don't like disposable intros. I don't like disposable outros either.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. And I can totally see. Again, I can clearly see where you're coming from. But part of what I like about Mikey is this weird sort of unhinged character,
unpredictability.
Stuff. Yeah. And I really like these sort of things. There's another one. Mermaid Slur, which appears on the second album, which is also a
Death of a Dead Day.
Classic. Yep, and he also does it on our other Iron Maiden link. So Mikey went on to record an album with Adrian Smith.
Oh, okay.
And the band, the project is called Primal Rock Rebellion. Sorry, a lot of alliterative there, and it's often regarded as quite an interesting little piece because it is very much a melding of both those men. Mikey is prevalent as being this mad, insane, just cartoony vocalist, and he puts that on top of Adrian Smith, who is very much a classic heavy metal guitarist, and they create a really interesting album. I think it's very limited in its appeal because how many SikTh fans are also Iron Maiden fans? I suppose there probably would be quite a few because
based on our sample of 2, maybe not that many.
Well, yeah. But metal is quite a broad thing, so maybe I'm being a little bit negative there. But yeah, it's a strange one. I didn't really get on with it too well because instrumentation wise, it's very Adrian Smith. But I'm obviously quite a big Mikey Goodman fan, so it didn't really give me the sort of thing I wanted. But there is also another just vocal song by Mikey on that album. There is some slight sort of atmospherics to it. I wouldn't call it instrumentation, but it's the one with the most music in inverted commas, I suppose.
But Mermaid Slur is only 47 seconds long. This is a good 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, this is actual song length. So yeah.
Wild bones, wait. The Yeti no longer has a home.
But yeah, there you go.
But anywho, we've made it. Overall impressions were, then the first time I'd listened the whole way through it, I thought, nah, this really isn't for me. But I did give it a few more listens and it grew on me a bit. And I think, I don't know, I mean, I've only listened to Death of a Dead Day once, and so I don't know if I enjoyed it more as an album or if it's because I had learned to appreciate SikTh more by that point.
I think you'd like Death of a Dead Day an awful lot more. It's a lot more consistent. There's definite running theme throughout that record, which this one doesn't have. It's very this one is a lot more diverse. There's a lot more going on, and for me personally, that's why I like it. So I would say if you don't get on with this album, I would easily recommend Death of a Dead Day. Give that a go, see if that's more your style, because like I say, thematically that album feels more consistent and it's not as wild. What would you recommend elsewise for tech lovers?
So I've got 2 picks that are kind of, I guess they're different takes on djenty kind of music.
Yep.
Rather than tech metal, which I'm not a big expert in. The first one is a band we mentioned earlier, Meshuggah, and the album's called Obzen.
Yep. Good choice.
And there's only one song you particularly need to listen to this, which is called Bleed, which is one of the most unrelenting, technically outstanding metal songs ever, and has the most incredible drums. And I urge you to look up, forget the name of the guy, but he teaches drums, and he plays the whole way through the song, and then he explains it because it's a double 30-second note into a bunch of 16s pattern, and it's absolutely unbelievable. Really, really good. But Obzen's a really good Meshuggah album. I'll give you an idea of, I guess, a more Swedish take on it, if you like.
Yep.
The other album I thought would be good is by an Indian band called Sky Harbor, and the album's called Guiding Lights. This came out last year. I actually saw them touring in the UK a few months ago. Guiding Lights is kind of the lighter side of djent. There's a lot of melody and harmony, but there is still a technical intricacy that gives it some bite as well.
Yep.
It is much more prog metal-y. But it's not too pretentious, so I think it's definitely a much lighter one. But those were 2 albums I thought, hey, give those a crack.
If we're going to talk about Sky Harbor, we should probably mention Tesseract as well, because the vocalist for Sky Harbor was previously in Tesseract, and Tesseract are also a very sort of softer, more proggy metal band in the same sort of vein.
What's a good Tesseract one? Altered State. Altered State's good Tesseract album.
I much prefer one, so that's fine.
So yeah, listen to both of them and then tell us your favourite.
But yeah, the albums I picked in particular that I would also recommend off the back of SikTh are Protest to Heroes Kaisha. Keisha. I'm not entirely sure how you
pronounce it. I have no idea how to pronounce it.
Yeah. But again, it's a very sort of wild, mad sort of tech metal record. It's a little bit looser, I suppose, in its style. It feels a little bit more like it flows in a nice way. But yeah, one of my favourites. And I wanted to recommend something that wasn't British as well. So I move out of my comfort zone a little bit. So the other one I've also decided to choose is I'm going to choose a Between the Buried and Me album. I want to choose the latest one, Parallax 2. which is a fantastic album. I really enjoy it, and lots of passages, lots of SikTh stuff reminds me of Between the Buried and Me.
I have not heard that one. I think I've listened to Colours.
We have spoken about this in the past, so yes.
Okay.
But yeah,
thank you for being my memory aid.
it's all good. Don't worry about it. But yeah, as much as I love Colours, don't get me wrong. There's something about the new one which I really like. Again, it's very cohesive, but at the same time, it's very progressive. So yeah, those are my picks. Oh, actually, I'm gonna pick one more just to be annoying, because
for heaven's sake, who do you think this is?
There's an Italian band, I think they are, called Destrage, Destrage.
I've heard of them,
and they released an album last year called "Are You Kidding Me? No."
Oh, that album is really off the wall,
and it really reminds me of SikTh. I would hazard a bet that SikTh are probably one of their main influences. So if you want something similar, Destrage, Are You Kidding Me? No. There you go. Right, we had a few comments and feedback regarding SikTh.
Okay.
That I'm now going to go through. So on Twitter, we received a message from @MadQuills.
Oh, it's Danny Waddison.
Okay, I wasn't familiar with the man, but yes, hello.
Bless him.
So yes, he was saying from them tearing up a tiny St Albans pub, the Horn, at a homecoming show, to hanging out at the youth club called the Pioneer, where all metal bands hung out, and I offered Mikey a tenner to buy the promotion company he started. I asked actually whether or not that was Unparalleled Carousel, because that logo and that name appears on a few of the SikTh albums, and I've always wondered what it was, because it's not the record label. So it might be the promo company, but yeah, he couldn't remember, to be honest. he was too starstruck, combined with being drunk and cocky. So yeah, that was a nice little story. So cool. I also got some stuff on Facebook. My good friend Stephen Robinson, he was like, I'm not good at comments, but this album is basically my youth.
Oh, okay. You've kept a friend, and I've made an enemy.
So yeah, I'm very good friends with Steve. We in fact went to those early SikTh shows that I was talking about earlier together. So yeah. And I also got something from my partner in crime, Louis Kong, and he said, let me find out. Oh, come on, phone, load up quicker. Right, there we go.
Can you look at this on your phone?
Yeah,
oh, come on, man.
I don't want to I'm recording things on the PC. I don't want to accidentally muck around. Right, he said, this album definitely influenced by musical tastes. I picked this up after buying a Dillinger Escape Plan album, and I never looked back. SikTh were also the first band I saw live as a kid. Wow, that's an introduction and a half.
That's good. That's good. That's a lot of happy memories.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's obviously some love to this band as per what I've experienced, put out, but not so much as what Alan has said. But there you go.
So I guess there is the usual way to bookend this, which is to say, if you've liked the show, we'd really appreciate if you left us a review on iTunes.
Yep.
That is very important. If you look at the podcasts on iTunes and go into the music category, you will see that the highest rock one is the Kerrang podcast, and there hasn't been a new episode of that since 2007. So let's get rid of them. Let us become the kings of the metal realm. Because there's too many dance music mixes on the iTunes podcast section. And we can make this right. We can make it better. So if you leave us a review, if you subscribe, tell your friends about us, all those things will really help promote us. You can ask us questions and go to our website at castironshow.co.uk, and you can also follow us on Twitter at castironshow. Next time, we will be listening to
Deer and Grey's Ouroboros. So yeah, we've decided that we're going to tackle Deer and Grey for the next show, regardless of who was picking it.
Yeah, it's technically your pick, because I couldn't think of two for the next one. So yeah.
No, that's fine. But it seemed like it was the obvious choice, because we are going to go and see them next week, and they are one of my favourite bands, and I know I've introduced Alan to them as well. So yeah. I'm really looking forward to tackling that album and just seeing what they're like live as well, because regardless of the fact that they're one of my favourite bands, I've never seen them live.
I'm looking forward to everything about it except trying to pronounce the song names.
Well, there you go. Okay. But yes, so that will be the next episode of Cast Iron Show. Like I say, if you want to subscribe, you can do so at itunes.castironshow.co.uk. We would really appreciate if you do. And please tune in next time, where we'll be talking Deer and Grey.
Yeah, thanks for listening. See you next time.
Bye bye.